So Jaap is up next as a consultant to cabling. Jaap works for OrangeTrail, as you see in the bottom right-hand corner. They help all kinds of organizations to understand collaboration and social networking technology and adopt those platforms and use it for business value, to create business value. Jaap, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I can skip my introduction. Thanks, Samuel. I don't know about you guys, but I was nodding in agreement a lot with the first talk this morning. And I'm hoping that actually my talk will give you some insights into what you then can do as a leader, or what you can tell your leaders to do when you want to change your organization into that agile place. And I'm sorry I took some liberties with the truth of cabling and its history and number of employees, so bear with me. But the story begins a couple of years ago. Cabling, unlike what Anna has said, is a company. They were formerly owned, government owned, and they actually connected all the houses in Portugal to the telephone network. So they were in every house. You like the story? They're in every house, and they're connecting people to the world. And later on, they started to actually also put the TV cables in there and started connecting people to the TV network. And then at the end of the 90s, I'm not sure, but because of the Thatcher era, they went public. So they're no longer government owned. But it took a large number of years before actually anything interesting started to happen in the industry. So they went on being monopolistic and slow and those kinds of things. And then early 2000, mid-2000, 2005, let's put a number on it, all the telco companies started to come into Portugal with what they call triple play stuff. So all of a sudden they had mobile, TV, telephone, internet, all in one go. And they stormed the market. And year over year, cabling started to lose market size and started to lose revenue. And every year, McChief, in his New Year speech, said, guys, we got to wake up. We got to change. The market's changing. Wake up, wake up. But everybody in the street was just keeping going on and on with their business. In 2012, they figured, let's appoint an innovation manager. Because if we have an innovation manager, we must become innovative. So the innovation manager then called us, and we devised a plan to do a big innovation campaign, and we went through the whole organization. We had an ideation platform. Today we would call that a social platform, where people could post ideas, people could respond, you could vote them up, the best ideas, all of that stuff. And at some point we had challenges, so like for a week we'd have one topic and everybody would focus on that topic and ideas would flow in. And then we, with the two innovation managers and McChief himself, as part of the innovation board, we would look at all the ideas and decide on, are we going to invest in anything cool or not? And after one of these meetings with the innovation board, McChief burst out. McChief, to the people that don't know it, he's the CEO. He burst out and said, why the hell are we doing this innovation crap? We have the people out there in the street, they have no idea. They're just doing what we were doing 15 years ago. I tell them every year in every newsletter we have on our intranet, everywhere it says we need to change, and they don't listen to me. And everybody just remained quiet. I went home, thought about it. Next day I talked to my colleagues about it, and we came up with this idea. So the next innovation board meeting, I said to McChief, I have an idea. Instead of asking people to come up with ideas to become innovative, which you're not, let's do something else. You have 20,000 people, not 1,800, 20,000 people out in the street, and they visit all the houses. They all have handheld PDAs in which you guys give them the planning. You tell them what to do. You tell them how to do their work, all their manuals. But you also have a camera on each of these handhelds. Let's use them. Let's ask your employees a simple question to take a picture of every competitor they see in the street and post it on our ideation platform. And let's see what happens. So McChief said, all right, it's easy. So that's what he did. He said, 10 years ago, we were the only ones delivering cables. Now we see volumes drop, all hell's breaking loose. Well, short story long, he said, if you see a competitor, take a picture and post it as a reply to this post. Within hours, there were hundreds of pictures. Within days, they had thousands of pictures of competitors. And the mood in the company changed like that. People were like, holy shit, we're in trouble. We need to do something. People started to have conversations on that platform about how to change things, how to do work in a different way. The morale of the story, and that's what McChief said when he was done with this, he said, one simple question changed my company while I was having speeches, newsletters, intranet messages, and just one simple question did the trick. And I think this aligns as well a lot with Nadeep's story, is telling people what to do, telling people they're in trouble, it doesn't work anymore. And it's asking smart questions, doing simple interventions in your company that makes people think themselves is what changes things. And there's where social technology plays a big role, because you can reach everybody. Based on this happening, McChief decided, I want more of this. I want all of my leadership to be engaging in this kind of leadership. And we're going to have a social platform. So we went along and helped them to do that. As good consultants, you go in and you ask them, so what are your problems as a leader? And I think you all in this room, you all know this list. I'm out of touch with my employees. I don't reach them anymore. They don't like me. They're not engaged. Key company messages are not reaching my people on the work floor anymore. Information doesn't get past middle management. They block everything I try and do. People are passive. They just take no initiative. You can wonder why. And we're slow. So we said, all right, let's work with that. So now on to what it is, that network leadership. And we define 4 key application areas. The first one is you can use social technology as a leader to direct and activate your employees. And what McChief did is an example of that. This is the most strategic part of network leadership. The second one is you can use social technology to align and to prioritize, which is a more tactical thing. And I'll explain what it is a little bit later. The third one is more the nice thing, like the barbecues. It's not really important, but people like to see that you're human as well. So you can be present, and if you visit a nice place, you take a picture. So it's becoming visible and amiable, engaged. And the fourth one is more ad hoc. It's encouraging and amplifying what's happening in the organization. So it's actually not you doing things, but it's spotting things that are happening and making sure that's amplified to the organization. So let's talk through that a little bit. Directing and activating, it's actually exactly what McChief did with the innovation, or with that big challenge. It's basically thinking about the key topics in the organization and the 3 big things that you're trying to do, and being smart about it. Asking questions to the organization, which makes them talk about it, makes them think about it, makes them interact about these topics, instead of being top down and telling them what they need to do. And what this does is actually it starts change processes a long time before the processes start today. Because today, when a change is made in an organization, the board signals a problem, they hire McKinsey, they sweat in a little room for a week, come out with a presentation, the board says yes, and give it to the communications department, and then the change program starts. And everybody resists, refuses. And if you take this approach a little bit more, and like McChief did, is you say, so what do we see our competitors doing? What kind of technology do we think is risky for our business? And ask the company these kinds of questions. They'll be in the frame of mind of change. They'll understand the problems that the company is dealing with, and they'll be ready, or more or less ready, to change when you make the change. This is an example of James McMahon, the HR director of CableLink, and he's found out that people need to be more empowered in the company. And instead of hiring McKinsey to figure out what that means, he started a task force. But before they actually start their work, he asks everybody, what should we start doing and what should we stop doing when we're talking about this? And you get input, and based on that input, these people start work. So this is a way to direct and activate people. The basic thing here is point people into the important parts of the business. So that's that core, that rigid part that Nadeep talked about. The second part is prioritizing and aligning. And this is this is more tactical. So if as a leader you share what you're doing, or what you've done, or what you're going to do, and you do that in a smart way, so you only share the important things that you're doing, people start to see what you think is important. People start to see what's important to the company. If you, again, then add a little question to the end of it, where you involve people, people start to get engaged with the priorities. And when people know your priorities, and this was all part of the first speech, they can align with your priorities. And alignment, as we just were told, is the biggest problem in many organizations that causes all this friction. So simply for leaders to share what they're working on, to share what's important, helps people align and helps to show people without presenting it, show what the priorities are in the company. In this case, Louise McGeek, the IT or the CIO of the company, went to Shanghai. They also have an office there, Anna. They share what they're doing. You didn't know that, did you? But she found out there was an actual problem with the cloud engineers working there because they had to collaborate with other offices over different time zones. So she signals that problem, and then she says to the whole company, this is what I've seen, who has the same problem and who solved the problem. So actually you can size the problem and then you can see if people have solved it and in what way. So you actually activate the company. This one, becoming visible and engaging, it's the softer side of things. So you can share things that you're proud of, that you think is interesting. And in this case, there is actually quite some value in it. John McCheef, the CEO, they've just launched a big campaign in Russia, an online campaign. He shares the great results they've achieved there and tells the company, we're up next to Sweden. So any ideas on how we can deal with Sweden are welcome. So it's involving the company and what's going on. The third one, encouraging and amplifying, has to do with being aware of the kind of behaviors that as a leader you want people to actually do. So maybe it's the values. And spotting on the platform the people that are actually doing it, and then either simply liking what they're doing, and if you like something, a lot of people will see it, and if you like something that somebody's doing, other people will copy it. So this simple process of responding to or liking activities of people that are in line with your values and with your priorities will be a big benefit and will actually be a very indirect way to push people in the direction that you'd like them to go to. Okay, so how do you do this? It might seem obvious, but there's a couple of instruments that we've defined around this. The first one is live broadcasting. So you go live or you tape a video like we are right now on the internet. The second one is what we call a challenge. The third one, and I'll explain what they are later, is a jam session, working out loud, and more stories like this. The live broadcast is really straightforward. You put mobile phone, most platforms or a lot of platforms can do this. I think Workplace is probably the one that's doing it best because they've figured it out on the consumer market. But you put a phone in front of your face and you start broadcasting to a group or to the whole company. A lot of companies do this when they present yearly results or do presentations. That's, in our eyes, it's fine, but it's still push-down, top-down way of communicating. It's a lot more interesting if you make it closer, if you make it more about what's happening now. So one of our clients, Booking.com, for example, the CEO, when she gets out of a meeting, something's been decided, she brings the team together, puts the video on, and actually tells the whole company what they've just decided. So there's no lag, there's just immediate communication, and that makes it really interesting. Challenges and jams, I think the example, the ideation, the example of McCheef in the beginning, that's what these things are. You ask one powerful question to a large group of people. The difference between a challenge and a jam, a challenge is probably a more difficult topic that takes longer for people to talk about. People interact more between each other, so people build on each other's ideas, on each other's inputs. And the jam is 30 minutes, 1 hour. Again, questions that people respond to, and there's a lot of energy. But there's not a lot of interaction between the people because it's too fast. A big mistake a lot of companies make, and it's completely in line with the story this morning, is that they organize Q&A sessions online. And if you ever do a social technology, don't do these things. They don't work. The dynamics of them are, the whole logistics of it don't work. Imagine, and this is actually a true story, the innovation director of a bank started his new job, and on his first day, he did a Q&A online with the whole bank. So imagine a couple of thousand people ready to fire questions at one person. And if you're a director, these questions are not going to be simple questions. They're about what's your strategy, what's your vision, so these need some time to think about. So the dynamics of such a session is, it starts, 10 questions hit like the first minute, then the person needs to read them, 2 minutes, the person has to think, 5 minutes, the person has to type, 8 minutes. So before any reply is there, it's 8 minutes and everybody's gone. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. So the dynamics of this doesn't really work. So that's why we have jams. You change that around, the leader asks the questions, the people talk back. And it's a lot more engaging and a lot more dynamic. Little side step. Then the working out loud part, I think I talked about it quite a lot. This is the day-to-day stuff that's happening. A good way to start doing this as a leader, because we're used to looking into the past, that's because we report a lot in companies, is to talk a little bit about what you're doing. So really practical, what we tell leaders is on Monday, talk about last week, on Wednesday, talk about this week, and on Friday, talk about next week. But make it practical. Do make it strategic for yourself. Talk about the stuff that's important. Talk about the stuff you want people to know you're doing. Talk about the stuff you want people to align on with you. And then the more stories like this, it's the same, more or less the same principle as the amplification part. The reason I talk about it again is it's a shift, it's a complete mind shift from you publishing and the communications people publishing things to the communications people and you spotting things that are interesting and saying this is great, putting the spotlight on them. So it's a completely different management style. It's extremely powerful. And here, basically, what's happened is somebody says, please help me improve the sales training that we have. Please give me ideas to improvement, continuous improvement, hashtag. And John McChief goes in and says, this is the way we need to do this. This is a lot cheaper than running 10 workshops and all of these things. So it's endorsing the behavior of people. If you tell, a lot of leaders most leaders will actually buy into this story if you tell it to them, but then if you say, so what are you going to do? They kind of go blank. So what we've done is create a couple of easy steps, what we take people through when you want to set this up within your company. The first thing, completely align again with the first story, what are your 3 main priorities for the coming year or the coming 6 months? List them. Then what are 4 powerful questions that you can ask around these 3 priorities? Think about them, list them, and plan some challenges and some jams in that 3-month period, for example. And then the third thing is look at your calendar and go through each week and think about what could I do a live broadcast on, what could I work out loud on, where are some successes that could potentially be shared. Just think about these things and plan them in your calendar. So you've got your activity planned. Because a lot of leaders we see that engage in this thing, they go sit in the back of their Mercedes on Friday morning and like, oh shit, I have to post on the platform again today. I have no idea what I need to do. If you do this takes 30 minutes if you do it well, and you plan for 2 months, and then it takes 5 minutes of every leader when they have their interactions. So this is a way that really makes this thing work. So going back to the leaders, being out of touch with employees, if they do this, they interact with their employees directly. People talk back and forth directly. That's been solved. Not reaching people, that's also solved. You talk to them, you ask questions, people start to talk between each other about you, so that's good. Middle management, it's still there, but you just go over on top of them. And if you're good, they'll take part in the conversation if they're smart, actually. The passiveness, again, switching from telling people what to do to asking questions and asking for input, changes from a passive behavior into a more active behavior. This doesn't happen overnight, but it changes when companies do this persistently. And then when you start doing this, you start to become faster. Cable Link isn't fast yet, but they're faster than they used to be. An overview slide. I think I'm close to running over. And then questions are the management instrument of the future. Asking questions empowers and activates everybody.